The business cycle moves with a consistent rhythm that stems from the nature of free markets and credit based economic systems. This rhythm or sequence of events has remained the same in each economic cycle over the last several decades, in both inflationary periods and disinflationary periods. Business cycles track the progression of aggregate economic activity through periods of expansion and periods of contraction. These transitions can take multiple years, but more recently, with the adoption of more ubiquitous trading schemes, the concept of business cycles has been molded around the desire to capture the random ebbs and flows of the stock market. In 1980, Victor Zarnowitz and Jeffrey Moore, two pioneers of business cycle research, proposed a signaling system based on the predictable rhythm or sequence of the business cycle. This system helps alert policymakers and business owners to the onset of recessions or the start of recoveries. The original signaling system was based on leading indicators and aggregate indicators. At EPB Research, we use a four economies framework, or four buckets of indicators, to improve the granularity of the signals offered by the predictable business cycle sequence. In this video, we'll improve upon the original signaling system by using leading, cyclical, and aggregate indicators of the economy. Then we'll review the system's historical performance and conclude with some comments about using the business cycle sequence to your advantage. The EPB Four Economies framework separates the overall economy into four baskets or four categories based on the timing of their movement within the business cycle sequence. As the name suggests, leading indicators are the earliest movers and generally contain monetary, credit, and housing related variables. These are what we call soft concepts, as they don't directly measure employment or economic growth, but rather measure the availability of money and credit. Cyclical indicators measure employment and economic growth from the economy's most cyclical or interest rate sensitive sectors, which are generally residential construction, manufacturing, and the consumption of big ticket consumer goods. So whenever you see cyclical index, that means employment and economic growth in construction and manufacturing specifically. Aggregate indicators define the entire business cycle and directly measure employment and economic growth for all sectors of the economy. Most often, the Federal Reserve, financial media, and market pundits focus on these aggregate economy indicators, but as our signaling system will show, changes in the aggregate economy are not informative about future conditions, but rather descriptive of current conditions. By monitoring a collection of leading, cyclical, and aggregate indicator baskets and studying their trends and growth rates, we are nearly assured that we'll be alerted to economic downturns before they occur and economic revivals before they arrive. As mentioned earlier, the concept of the business cycle has been molded into an attempt to create a precise stock market timing tool. But using this signaling system or business cycles in general for that purpose will yield dissatisfying results. Let's first look at the signaling system in action and then discuss how it can be useful to asset managers, business owners, and corporate management teams. Leading indicators provide advanced warning of where the economy will go in the future. With virtually no exceptions, all recessions start in the construction and manufacturing sectors, so these two sectors deserve special attention, which is our addition or improvement over the original Zarnowitz and Moore signaling system. When the aggregate index turns negative, a recession is already underway with no exceptions. Our signaling system will provide advanced warning of this occurrence. This signaling system will provide three distinct signals: pending slowdown, pending recession, and recession. The first signal, which we will call pending slowdown, defines a period when the economy is expected to grow below trend, or to spot a potential pocket of economic weakness. The first warning signal is triggered when the leading index falls below 2% growth and the cyclical index and aggregate index are both growing above 2%. This signal tells us that in the future, the economy will transition from growing above trend or above 2% to growing below trend or below 2%. This chart shows the periods when the pending slowdown signal was triggered. After the leading index warns you of below trend growth, the next signal defines actually arriving at that below trend growth. The second signal, or pending recession, is triggered when the leading index falls below -1% and the cyclical index and aggregate index are both growing less than 2%. This signal tells us that the economy is currently growing below trend, with both indexes that measure employment and growth less than 2%, while the most forward-looking measure, the leading index, is contracting. This chart shows the periods when the pending recession signal was triggered. Signal 3 is the recession signal, but at this point, significant problems have already hit the economy. Signal 3 is triggered when the leading index, cyclical index, and aggregate index are all negative. This chart shows the periods when the recession signal was triggered. The official government-dated NBER recession dates aren't known for well over a year, and the Federal Reserve, average economist, and average investor don't realize the recession until it's well underway. This signaling system is not intended to be programmed for algorithmic trading of the S&P 500. It is to be used as a guide and a tool for measuring and gauging the risk of economic downturns and economic revivals. In real time, economic data comes with revisions and changes that needs to be taken in stride with some flexibility. As the saying goes, the economy experiences long and variable lags, and that remains true with this signaling system. In the 1990 recession, the pending slowdown signal provided 12 months advanced warning, and the pending recession signal provided 4 months advanced warning. In the 2008 recession, lead times were radically different. The pending slowdown signal arrived in April 2006, almost 2 years before the official recession start date, and the pending recession signal was triggered 17 months before the official recession start date. With the benefit of hindsight, these were great signals that could have saved many business owners, asset managers, and financial institutions that were willing to give credence to the historically reliable business cycle sequence. Sadly, not many took these advanced warnings due to a continued upswing in financial markets and prevailing optimistic sentiment, very similar to the euphoria experienced in 2023 and early 2024. While the earliest signal was triggered in the spring of 2006, and the more important pending recession signal flashing red by the fall of 2006, the S&P 500, Russell 2000, and microcap stock indexes continued to rally, rising another 20%, providing endless fuel for tormenting anyone that dared to offer a word of caution about the economic reality. Quietly, however, bank stocks were no longer rising to new highs, but this was ignored in favor of the broader market narrative. The pending slowdown signal started flashing in the summer of 2022, and the pending recession signal has been on alert since December 2022. Similar to the 2008 business cycle, the S&P 500 has rallied strongly since the pending recession signal started flashing, but the underlying performance of other major indexes is not as robust. The Russell 2000 and microcap stock indexes have increased, but to a much lesser extent. And very similarly, there's been negative performance of bank stocks, but this time the pain is mostly concentrated in the smaller banks compared to the money center banks. It's of course possible that the pending recession signal could reverse without a full economic downturn occurring. This has not happened in the last 6 decades of data, but we must reserve that as a possibility. For now, the pending recession signal has been flashing since the tail end of 2022, which warrants caution for anyone using a business cycle approach. The most important concept to remember from a business cycle approach is that time alone doesn't negate a signal. A recession is not avoided because a lot of time has elapsed if the signaling system is still flashing red. If the leading, cyclical, and aggregate indicators change course, then all bets are off and a new outlook is established. A lapse in patience is often a fatal flaw when using a business cycle process. As mentioned earlier, the business cycle, this signaling system, and the overall framework at EPB Research should be used as a tool or a guide for measuring economic risks. Our framework, this signaling system, or any other approach will not provide you with tops and bottoms in the stock market, despite what any marketing materials might suggest. The prime example of a patient investor using an approach like this, although he'd strongly deny the characterization, is Warren Buffett. Buffett will always suggest that his actions are solely based on finding attractive deals, but the cash pile at Berkshire Hathaway has a funny way of mirroring the stock market or the inverse of the business cycle. Cash goes up as the market rises and the business cycle peaks, and cash goes down when the market falls and a recession sets in. Buffett seemingly has no problem with 1 year, 2 year, or 5 year waiting periods because he's crafted a unique strategy that benefits from his patience and his ability to capture opportunities better than any investor to date. Harnessing the opportunities provided by the business cycle requires something more similar to a Buffett approach to operating a business or investment portfolio rather than a high frequency trading system that is given much more coverage in today's media. While not everyone can come up with a sophisticated trading system, anyone can monitor the slow moving and predictable rhythm of the business cycle and use the information as a guide to better the long run performance of business operations or investment decisions. If you're interested in using a business cycle framework like this, you can visit our website and book a call with us to learn more.